long tones is the backbone for the development of great technique and ability on any brass instrument. I personally like to play long tones that follow chord progressions because the music that I'm trying to get good at playing follows chord progressions. The 1-5-7-1 long tones is a chord progression that's been written out for trombonists or other instruments that read bass clef. And it follows a simple 1-chord, 5-7 chord, and 1 chord. You don't need to know too much about what that means right now, but let's take a look at the sheet. You'll notice that there are 6 parts, and they're listed with Roman numerals in the left column: part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, and part 6. The top 2 parts start above the staff, so we're probably not ready to do that as beginners, but we'll get there eventually. We're going to be looking at part 3, and you'll notice that part 3 starts with an F. F is the 4th line in the bass clef. Now it's 3 whole notes and then 1 measure of rest. And then you'll notice a double bar, and then there's a new key signature. We have gone from one key to the next key. The first key that we play in is the key of B flat. And if you look at part 6, just underneath that, you'll notice it says B flat major. When you go over to that key change, you'll notice it now says B major. So in those first 4 measures, all of the notes that you see on the page are notes that belong to the key of B flat major. There are 2 flats in the key signature, and they're B flat and E flat. Everything else is natural. It just so happens that if you're playing part 3, you're starting on an F, and it's F natural. Now let's look over to B major, which is the 5th measure of the exercise. It's just after all of those hashtags. We're now in a key signature that has 5 sharps in it. And you're not going to see that very often as beginning players in your beginning method books, but there's no reason not to be exposed to it now. The note on the staff looks just like the note that you started with, but there is a sharp on that line in the key signature, so now we play that note as an F sharp, and that's in 5th position, not 1st position. We follow this pattern for these 4 bars. And then the key signature changes again, and we go to the key of C major, 4 measures. Then we go to the key of D flat major for 4 measures. Then we go to the key of D major for 4 measures. And it just keeps going up by half steps for 2 whole pages. We go all the way up to B flat major, 1 octave higher from where we started today. Now, if you're just starting out, practicing parts 3, part 4, and part 5 make the most sense. Those are going to be well within your range, and it's important to understand the patterns that you're playing. If you're playing part 3, you'll notice you start on F natural. You play that for a couple measures, and then you go to F sharp, which is a half step higher. It's in 5th position. Then you go to G, which is a half step higher. It's in 4th position. Then you go to A flat. It's a half step higher. You're in 3rd position. So by playing part 3, you're really working on the placement of your chromatic scale, just going up by half steps. Now, if you look down at part 4, you'll notice that the first 2 notes are D and E flat. Now, it just so happens that all the notes that are in that first measure, in all the parts, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5, and part 6, all of those notes fit a B flat chord. You may have heard the term B flat arpeggio, which is the root, the 3rd, and the 5th of any chord. In the key of B flat, that would be a B flat, a D, and an F. And you'll notice in that first measure, all of the notes are B flat, D, or F. When we get to the second measure, all of these notes are now going to fit into an F chord. But it's not just an F chord, it's an F7, which means there is a flat 7, which happens to be an E flat in this chord. So part 4 goes from D up to E flat, back to D. You'll notice that D is located in 4th position, and then E flat is only a half step higher in 3rd position. That's the pattern that goes through all of part 4. It just goes up by half steps. When you get to the key of B major, you'll notice that D turns into a D sharp. Happens to be the same location as that E flat you just played in the previous key, but now we go from D sharp in 3rd up to E in 2nd. Skip over to the key of C major. Now we've got E in 2nd, F in 1st. Then we've got F in 1st, G flat in 5th. Then we've got F sharp in 5th, down in the key of D major, F sharp up to G. This is just a pattern of half steps. Let's look at part 5 really quickly. Starts on D just like part 4, but it goes down and it goes down a whole step. A whole step is going to be 2 slide positions most of the time. So we go from D in 4th down to C in 6th. When we go up a half step to the key of B major, that D becomes a D sharp. It goes from 4th to 3rd position, but then that C becomes a C sharp. So now it's 3rd position to 5th position, and so on and so forth as the pattern goes. The 2 most common ways to play through this is to do a call and response manner where I play the first key signature. So I would play the F, F, F in the key of B flat if I'm playing part 3. And then you would respond by playing F, F, F. Then I would go up to the key of B and play F sharps, and then you would play the F sharps. Call and response is a great way to try to match tone and ease. Now the other way to play this is if I play what's known as the bass line. The bass line is part 6. It's the root of all the chords. So in the first measure I play a B flat, and then in the second measure when I'm supposed to play an F chord I play the F, and then in the third measure I go back to a B flat. One way we'll play through this is call and response, where I will leave extra time for you to respond. But then the other way we'll play through this is just straight through, where I'll play the bass line and at the same time you can play any part you want because all the parts fit together.